WNBA Finals, and so I'll leave it there. I mean, I'm just obviously disheartened. I'm a human too. I have a family. I have 2 kids who are devastated by these comments, and so all I'll say is just, it's obviously been a tough week.
The WNBA has just pushed the nuclear button. And if the rumors coming out of the front office are true, the league might have just signed its own death warrant. 4 months, the tension between the league's explosive new popularity and its old-school governance has been tightening like a noose. But nobody expected the rope to snap this suddenly. We are hearing reports that are sending shock waves through the sports world. Commissioner Cathy Engelbert has allegedly moved to suspend Caitlin Clark following a catastrophic breakdown in negotiations regarding the new collective bargaining agreement. The accusation is stunning that Clark refused to sign a deal the league presented. A deal that many insiders are describing as a desperate attempt to cap her influence and control her earning power. If the WNBA thought this power play would force their golden goose to fall in line, they have made a miscalculation of historic proportions. The backlash hasn't just been loud, it has been deafening. Fans are canceling season tickets. Social media is calling for heads to roll. And the entire financial structure of women's basketball is suddenly teetering on the edge of a cliff. To truly understand why a suspension like this is so catastrophic, you have to peel back the layers of what actually happened in that negotiation room. This wasn't just about a paycheck. Sources indicate that the WNBA approached Clark with a team-friendly deal that was supposed to set the tone for the new CBA era, but the terms were reportedly draconian. We're talking about clauses that would grant the league excessive rights to her image, mandatory marketing appearances that would eat into her off-season, and a salary structure that barely moved the needle compared to her market value. The league was essentially asking Caitlin Clark to subsidize her own exploitation for the good of the game. When she slid that paper back across the table and refused, it wasn't just a contract dispute. It was a rejection of the entire WNBA business model that has relied on player sacrifice for decades. But Clark isn't a typical player, and treating her like one was the first mistake in a series of disasters that led us to this moment. The narrative circulating right now is that Commissioner Engelbert viewed this refusal as insubordination. In the eyes of the old guard, the league is the shield, and no player, no matter how many jerseys she sells, is bigger than the shield. The alleged suspension is being framed as a disciplinary measure, a way to humble the rookie and remind her who holds the keys to the kingdom. It is a classic corporate power move. Cut off the access, silence the voice, and wait for the employee to come crawling back. But this strategy ignores a fundamental reality of the modern sports landscape. We are living in the era of the player-empowered economy, and Caitlin Clark is the CEO of her own brand. Trying to strong-arm her with a suspension is like a local grocery store trying to ban Amazon. It doesn't hurt the giant. It only ensures the local store goes out of business. Let's look at the leverage here because the math simply does not add up for the WNBA. Caitlin Clark is walking around with a Nike signature deal worth reported nearly $28 million over 8 years. Add in her partnerships with Gatorade, State Farm, Wilson, and Panini, and her annual off-court income is easily in the 8-figure range. Now, compare that to the WNBA maximum salary, which sits around $250,000. It is a drop in the bucket. It is lunch money. If the commissioner thinks suspending Clark's WNBA salary is going to hurt her financial standing, she is living in a fantasy world. Clark could sit on her couch for the next 5 years, never touch a basketball, and still be one of the wealthiest female athletes on the planet. The league, however, cannot say the same. They rely on the Clark economy to justify their new media rights deals, their expansion plans, and their ticket price hikes. By suspending her, they are effectively setting fire to their own bank vault. This situation becomes even more volatile when you look at the timing. The WNBPA, the players' union, has already opted out of the current collective bargaining agreement. They did this because they saw the revenue Caitlin Clark brought in. They saw the chartered flights, the sold-out arenas, and the massive TV ratings, and they decided they wanted a bigger piece of the pie. The irony here is thick enough to cut with a knife. The union is demanding more money based on Clark's success. Yet, the league is allegedly punishing Clark for trying to secure her own future. It has created a fracture in the locker rooms that is impossible to ignore. While there has been a well-documented history of jealousy and hazing from some veterans who feel Clark gets too much attention, the smart players know the truth. They know that if Clark falls, the money train stops. If the commissioner alienates the biggest draw in the history of the sport, those charter flights go back to commercial and those salary bumps disappear. But the threat to the WNBA isn't just internal, it's existential, and it has a name: Unrivaled. This is the new 3-on-3 league founded by Breanna Stewart and Nafi Sakir, and it is looming over the suspension like a dark cloud. Unrivaled is offering something the WNBA has refused to give: equity. They are offering players ownership stakes and the highest average salaries in women's professional sports history. If Caitlin Clark feels disrespected by the WNBA, if she feels that the commissioner is trying to control her rather than partner with her, she has a landing spot ready and waiting. Imagine the optics of that scenario. The face of women's basketball turning her back on the WNBA to play in a startup league in Miami. It would legitimize Unrivaled overnight and relegate the WNBA to secondary status. The commissioner isn't just risking a contract dispute. She is inadvertently handing her competitors the ultimate weapon to destroy her league. We also have to talk about the fan reaction, because this is where the WNBA is truly losing the plot. The fan base that Caitlin Clark brought to the league is loyal to her, not the Shield. These are not legacy WNBA fans who will stick around out of habit. These are new fans who tuned in specifically to see the logo three-pointers and the no-look passes. If you take Clark off the court, those fans don't just switch to watching another game, they turn the TV off. We saw a preview of this earlier in the season when Clark was left off the Olympic team. The outrage was palpable, and the missed marketing opportunity was calculated in the millions. A suspension is that same mistake amplified by a factor of 10. Social media is already flooded with hashtags calling for a boycott of the league. And the resignation of Cathy Engelbert. The WNBA is fighting a war on two fronts, one against its star player and one against its own customers. And speaking of Cathy Engelbert, her position has never been more precarious. This alleged suspension feels like the desperate flailing of a leader who has lost control of the narrative. Throughout the season, Engelbert was criticized for being too passive. She remained silent while players like Kennedy Carter took cheap shots at Clark. She gave a disastrous interview where she compared the toxic racism directed at players to a rivalry like 0. But Clark changed that math. The league is generating revenue now. Ticket sales are up 400% in some markets. Merchandise is flying off the shelves. The Caitlin Clark effect is a tangible, audit-verified economic boom. For the league to turn around and offer her a deal that limits her upside is not just greedy, it's bad business. It suggests that the league executives still see the WNBA as a charity case rather than a booming business, and they are trying to manage costs instead of investing in growth. Clark's refusal to sign was a signal that she knows the business better than the people running it. Let's dig deeper into the jealousy aspect, because it plays a massive role in why this suspension feels so personal. Since the moment Clark was drafted, there has been a weird energy from the league's old guard. We heard legends like Cheryl Swoops make factually incorrect statements to downplay Clark's college records. We saw players on the court target her with physical play that went far beyond normal basketball aggression. The "you can't sit with us" energy was palpable. The commissioner's job is to bridge that gap to market the new stars while honoring the legends. Instead, by allegedly suspending Clark, Engelbert is effectively taking the side of the haters. She is validating the idea that Clark needs to pay her dues or wait her turn. But in the entertainment business, and sports is entertainment, you don't tell your headliner to wait in the back of the line. You put their name on the marquee. This suspension validates every conspiracy theory that the WNBA creates its own glass ceiling. There is also the NBA factor to consider. The NBA owns a massive chunk of the WNBA and has subsidized the league for decades to the tune of hundreds of millions of dollars. Adam Silver, the NBA commissioner, knows a good product when he sees one. He has been supportive of Clark, realizing that she is the key to finally making the WNBA self-sufficient. You have to wonder what is happening on the back channels right now. Is Adam Silver picking up the phone and asking Engelbert what on earth she is doing? The NBA wants the WNBA to be profitable so they can stop writing checks to cover the losses. A suspension of the league's only profitable asset goes directly against the interests of the NBA. If this standoff drags on, we might see Big Brother step in and force a resolution, which would be the ultimate humiliation for the WNBA front office. Let's play out the scenario of what happens if this suspension actually holds. Let's say Clark misses the first month of the season. The immediate impact is a cratering of TV ratings. The networks ESPN and ION, who signed massive deals expecting Clark content, will be furious. They paid for the Caitlin Clark show, not the commissioner's discipline hour. Breach of contract discussions could start happening behind closed doors. Then look at the arenas. Teams like the Indiana Fever, who sell out every night, will see empty seats. But it's not just the Fever. It's the opposing teams. When the Fever travel to play the Los Angeles Sparks or the Chicago Sky, those teams rely on that one game a year to boost their annual revenue. Suspending Clark hurts the bottom line of every single franchise in the league. It is a contagion that infects the entire ecosystem. Furthermore, this dispute highlights a massive disconnect in how the WNBA values its players. For years, the league has marketed itself on collective success, emphasizing the league over the individual. That works when you don't have a global superstar, but now they do. The NBA learned this in the 1980s. The NBA didn't explode because they marketed the league. They exploded because they marketed Bird versus Magic and then Michael Jordan. They leaned into the star power. The WNBA is currently trying to fit a Michael Jordan-sized peg into a square hole. They are trying to force equality of outcome in a meritocratic sport. By trying to humble Clark with a suspension, they are fighting against the natural gravity of stardom. The fans want stars. They want narratives. They want heroes. The league is trying to give them bureaucracy. We also need to discuss the silence of the other sponsors. Nike specifically. They have invested more in Caitlin Clark than the WNBA has. They have a signature shoe line dropping, marketing campaigns filmed, and global tours planned. Do you think Nike is going to be happy that their premier athlete is being benched by a league administrator? Nike wields immense power in the world of sports. If they feel the WNBA is damaging the value of their asset, they can exert pressure that makes the commissioner's head spin. We saw this with Michael Jordan in the 90s. The shoe companies often have more pull than the teams. If Nike calls the WNBA and says, "Fix this or we pull our league sponsorship," the suspension ends that same afternoon. The corporate machinery behind Clark is too big to fail, and the WNBA is acting like they are the only stakeholder in the room. There is a psychological element here, too. The ungrateful narrative. The league seems to feel that Clark should be grateful for the opportunity to play. But the reality is the opposite. The WNBA should be grateful Clark chose basketball. She could have been a soccer player. She could have gone into broadcasting immediately. She chose to elevate this league. The suspension sends a message to the next generation of players. Don't get too big or we will cut you down. What does that do to the incredible talent coming up in the NCAA right now? Does Juju Watkins look at this and think, "I can't wait to join the WNBA"? Or does she look at unrivaled or overseas options? This suspension makes the WNBA look toxic, petty, and unprofessional. It damages the recruitment pipeline for years to come. As the standoff continues, the rumors of a revolt within the Fever organization are also surfacing. Clark's teammates Aaliyah Boston and Kelsey Mitchell are in a tough spot. They want to support their teammate, but they also have to protect their own careers. However, sources suggest the locker room is united. They know that a rising tide lifts all boats. If the league can dictate unfavorable terms to Clark, they can definitely dictate them to Boston and Mitchell. This is a labor rights issue disguised as a discipline issue. The players know that if they let the league win this battle, they lose the war for the next CBA. This is why the union rep is likely in Clark's corner, advising her to hold the line. The unity of the players against the front office is the nightmare scenario for Angelbert. Let's not forget the role of the media in this. For the first time, the WNBA is dominating the 24-hour news cycle, but for all the wrong reasons. Stephen A. Smith, Pat McAfee, and the entire ESPN lineup are dissecting the commissioner's incompetence daily. Every segment that asks why is the WNBA sabotaging itself drives the public perception lower. The league spent millions on marketing campaigns to build the W brand, and they are unraveling it all with one administrative decision. The court of public opinion has already reached a verdict. The WNBA is the villain and Clark is the martyr. You cannot buy that kind of bad publicity. It sticks to a brand for decades. The unrivaled threat deserves a deeper look. If Clark goes to unrivaled, she isn't just changing leagues. She is signaling